Since profitability might be an important consideration, I think it is helpful that I walk you through as to what the credit card profit and loss statement looks like. In other words, how do credit cards earn and lose money? So here is how. There are three important parameters that we need to take into account. Those include the average spending per card, which in 2001 stood at about 18,999 pesos. The average outstanding credit portfolio, which for the average card stood at 4,454 pesos. And the next concept is that of the spread. So the spread is essentially the difference at which the banks lends money, which we know it's 40% in the case of credit cards, and the interest rates at which the bank borrows the money from other financial institutions. At this time, the interest rate lending bank had dropped for the 80-day loans to, roughly speaking, 10% in Mexico. Okay, so these three concepts are critical for determining the credit card profit and loss statement. Let's go there. The first thing is the main source of income for the credit card is that of financial income. How is that determined? That is determined by multiplying the spread, that means that differential in interest rates, times the outstanding credit portfolio, which is 4,454 pesos. In 2001, the spread was, roughly speaking, 30%, as I have stated before, and once we multiply it times the outstanding credit portfolio, that gives us an income of more or less 1,300 pesos per the average card. In addition, most of the other sources of income comes from commissions and fees. So let me break those down for you. First of all, there is the annual fees, which the case states more or less for most credit cards stood at about 400 pesos. Next, there is the commerce or retail fees, and these are estimated as a percentage of the spending, roughly speaking 3.5% of the spending, which are those 19,000 pesos I described above. So that gives us an income, more or less an yearly income of 665 pesos. And finally, there are other fees that could include many other concepts like overdrawing or losing the cards or getting a second card for the home. And more or less, those other fees average to about another 500 pesos yearly. Okay, so those are the main sources of income. But in addition, credit cards also have costs. Let me show you some of the main ones. First of all, they have to spend on points and insurance. Okay, points for the loyalty program with its associate partner network. Okay, the case states that more or less those points and insurance cost, roughly speaking, 0.7% of the spending, which are those 19,000 Mexican pesos. So points and insurance add up to, roughly speaking, 133 pesos a year. Next is the cost of delinquency. Delinquency was more or less contained. It stood, roughly speaking, at 3% of the outstanding credit portfolio. So that is equivalent to 136 pesos. And finally, there is the cost of fraud. Fraud stood at, roughly speaking, 0.6 or 0.59% of the spending, which will give us an average cost per year of 112 pesos. So these are the main sources of income and the expenses for a traditional credit card. Once we put it all together, we can see the average profitability of a card for any competitor in the market in Mexico in 2001 stood at, roughly speaking, 2,547 pesos. Incredible. Now you can see why the credit cards was one of the most profitable financial products existing in the market at the time. And this profitability would probably be a concern when you're trying to decide what kind of credit card to target to what customers.